Broad Street Review Podcast, Philly's online hub for arts, culture, and commentary, where art and ideas meet. I am your host, Darnell Radford. On today's podcast, we meet Rashad Newsome, interdisciplinary artist whose exhibition, Black Magic, is being presented at the Philadelphia Photo Arts Center. Here is my interview with Rashad Newsome. Welcome. I'm your host, Darnell Radford, and today I am in Rep Radio's Studio C, and I'm here to talk about more art, of course. So sitting across from me, I am here with Rashad Newsome. Can I say that right? Who's an artist here in Philadelphia. And we're here to talk about some work that is being featured at the Philadelphia Photo Arts Center.
Yes.
And so this came through one of my PR channels, and as soon as I read the description, I was like, yes, let's find a time. Let's get this set up. So Rashad, welcome to the podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Since this is our introduction to you, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am a interdisciplinary artist, originally from New Orleans, Louisiana. I've been living in New York for, I think, 18 years now. My studio practice is based in Brooklyn.
Okay. So do you live in Brooklyn?
I live in Brooklyn. Yeah, I live in Brooklyn, and my studio's in Brooklyn.
Okay. Yeah. So what prompted the move from New Orleans?
Well, when I graduated, I had some little shows, but mostly in kind of like punk spaces and kind of DIY kind of things. And, at that time, the extent of the New Orleans art scene was sort of the museum, the CAC, and then this street called Julia Street, which would be like the New Orleans form of like Chelsea or something, right?
Okay.
The galleries. But, and which were all kind of very like high-reaching spaces to exhibit. And so as an artist kind of building your career, there wasn't a lot in the way of exhibiting to kind of get to that point.
Yeah.
So I kind of knew very quickly that I needed to kind of leave and kind of see, kind of explore myself as an artist in a different city. And when you think about that, you immediately think about New York.
Yeah.
And so I always wanted to live in New York. And so, I just packed up and left. The funny thing is that what me and a lot of my friends were doing in just like spaces actually turned into a whole nother scene in New Orleans in like the Bywater and the Maroney. So now that's like a whole nother scene of like artist run galleries that you didn't really have at the time. So that's great.
Yeah. It's always interesting to find out where people are coming from, because while the opportunities to promote yourself may not be as great where you're coming from, there may be a community that is hard to leave. Mm-hmm. So now that you're here in Brooklyn, how'd you make your way to Philly?
Philly, well, I think my connection to Philly really came from the work that I have been doing with and about ballroom culture. And so I've very early on in creating that kind of work, I teamed up with one of the iconic ballroom legends here in Philly named Kevin Jay-Z Prodigy, and we've been working together for like 10 years. And so through Kevin and just kind of like being in ballroom and going to balls here and kind of working with other dancers from here in New York, I kind of became really acquainted with Philly. So really that's my connection to Philly, is the ballroom scene.
Yeah. And I feel like there are many people who embrace the ballroom scene now, partially because of things like Pose and some various documentaries that have come about. And there are some artists now who sort of sample sort of ballroom culture is probably a nice way to say it.
Yeah.
There's some people that are clearly appropriating ballroom culture,
Yeah.
but it has been here since the 70s.
Yeah.
And it's been around for a long time. When did it first reach you?
I think that had to be like, so I've been here since 2000. So it was like 99. I was at or actually 98. I was at a party, because in New Orleans we don't have a ballroom scene, but I was at a party and somebody was voguing, and I was like, this is amazing, and whatever that is, I want to like know more about it. And eventually I saw the movie Paris is Burning, and what is the one that came out after that with How Do I Look, I think it was, with Octavia St. Laurent. And when I decided to move to New York, I knew that I wanted to kind of connect to that community and that culture. And it was really easy for me because when I moved to New York, I moved into a Black queer collective, and there were folks in the house that had inroads to ballroom scene. There was one particular roommate of mine who was working at GMHC, the Gay Men's Health Crisis, who would like fund a lot of balls, and so through those channels I kind of got connected and just started to go. So I was like always like going to balls and like in ballroom, but I was an artist moving to New York, so I was like always kind of like ballroom adjacent, because I couldn't be out at balls all night because I was working as a preparator at most of the museums and galleries by day, so I had to work a lot. I couldn't be out at balls all the time.
What was the name of the house?
The house that I lived in, it was called Dumba, and it's a house that was started by a Canadian documentary filmmaker named Scott Berry.
Okay.
And he left the house. He started the house in like the 90s, and then over the years, the makeup of the house was just who kind of moved in. By the time I found out about this house, it was all Black and queer. And so, it's the movie, John Cameron Mitchell's film, Short Bus, is really about that house, but before the Black folk got there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really known for these parties they used to do called the Lusty Loft parties.
Okay.
And that film kind of centers around that aspect of the house.
Yeah. So what do you get from ballroom culture that people may not understand on the surface?
I mean, for me, what has always been interesting is the dance, the culture. There's a lot of things to talk about there, but for me, with my work, I've always been interested in the dance and how, it's sort of like this, particularly Vogue femme, which is the most current style of Vogue, which has various iterations, but just sort of how it works as this like language. There's these 5 elements that make up the dance, but what's interesting is how people take these 5 elements and whatever they know, whatever their personal history is or their personal interests, how that becomes kind of like the connective tissue between how these words come together in a sentence. And so I like the way that it functions as a language, or also as kind of like an open source code, because it's like people are, that particular style came about with, the internet, at the rise of the internet. So like people sharing YouTube clips and on different social media sites, and how that kind of language was being disseminated across the globe. Yeah. And people in other places are like taking on the language and making it their own, which then led to it being the global phenomenon that it is today. And so that to me has always been interesting.
Yeah. See, I remember, coming of age and making my way to Philadelphia and seeing some of the elements of ballroom culture on just regular LGBTQ dance floors like Woody's, and not really understanding where it came from or its origins, but I just knew that they had it down. They are a living.
Did you ever get out there?
Not as a participant per se, but I was always on the. No, not for any reason. I don't have a fear or anything like that. I feel like some people are born with rhythm. I'd like to say I have a little bit of rhythm, so I could probably
You gotta have
make a
some.
way in there.
It's
But
in
I
the
just
blood,
remember saying, like, before we were totally abusing phrases like "yes" and "get it,"
Mm-hmm.
and all that. Just remember feeling that inside, saying like, "This makes me feel."
Mm-hmm.
I'm walking away with a smile, like this sense of like, "All right, they're being who they are," and sort of giving everyone who's experiencing this license, permission
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
to
there's a
kind
freedom
of be
to it.
themselves
Yeah.
too. Yeah, so that freedom was always there. So I always, when I could experience it, I was always feeling that way about it. Yeah. So we'll bring it around to black magic. So tell us about black magic and how you began to craft these three elements together into one presentation.
So with Black Magic, it's kind of I think the project as a whole really came from a question I was kind of pondering in my work in general, like what is the work about, and I think it comes from like this being compelled to try to create something akin to the like the power embedded in Black folks' modes of creative expression. And I think, when I look at, my work over the years, just sort of like with shade compositions, like Black vernacular or the conductor, the performative nature of hip hop or Vogue, or kind of the collage work, which kind of deals with, the culture of domination and how active that is in the day-to-day lives of Black folk, And so I think that is kind of part of what was the impetus for this project, but then also thinking about how Black folk, like for instance, there's a body that survived that hellish trip from Africa to the United States. That body then survived slavery. That body then gave birth to other bodies, right, who survived Jim Crow, and some of those bodies, and then you have those bodies went on, and then some of those bodies became queer, and those bodies were subjugated by the Black folk that gave birth to them, right? And then within that queer community, some of those bodies became like trans or gender nonconforming, and then they were subjugated by the Black queer community they were a part of. And so you have that inherited trauma that's on these bodies, but then you also have like the day-to-day trauma, the microaggressions, macroaggressions, the constant threat of police violence. If you add gender to it, you have male violence. You have like the violence of what scholar Bell Hooks calls the capitalist, imperialist, white supremacist patriarchy. And so you have this Black body existing in this kind of tornado of trauma that's really never been addressed, right?
Yeah.
But somehow within that space, people still create all this globally celebrated cultural production,
Yes.
right? And so what is it that compels people to continue moving forward and to create beauty within that, in those harsh conditions? And so I was trying to give voice to that, and I think that's what Black Magic is. It's me sort of trying to kind of visualize that that thing, the essence of that. And so that's really what was the emphasis for the whole project. And the exhibitions focuses on one aspect of that, the performance as well, and then the ball. And so it was also a way to kind of show, like, have an interdisciplinary conversation with the work, because I work, there's like the object-based work, the performance work, and then the social practice work, which is really not about, there's art, right? But it's really about kind of working with people,
Yeah.
And so those are kind of three touch points that are always in my work. So I really want to kind of show them in concert. So yeah, that's what really was the impetus for the project. Yeah.
So when did you start piecing this together, and talk about how you brought in collaborators, people that to help you see this vision through?
Well, the works in the show had, I started making those works already in 2016 because some of them are early and a lot of them are new. And so I'll start with that. I mean, that work really kind of, I think collectively that exhibition speaks to the importance of the imagination as a form of resistance for not only Black but Black queer people, and kind of the frames that are consistent throughout the show for me represent the frames in which are kind of like projected onto us, and sometimes that we project onto ourselves. And like each work in the show is engaged in its own form of resistance to either expand or escape that frame. Some are like engaged in like an oppositional gaze where the figure is turned away from the viewer. Others are literally trying to escape the frame. And there's a sculpture in the space that has escaped the frame, and that sort of came out of me thinking about taking the images that were 2D into the 3D space. But the anchor of the show would be my first generation of my LACMA Art and Technology Prize, Being, which for me represents the ultimate freedom within the context of that exhibition, because it exists in the realm of the imagination. So it can be anywhere at any time, and it can be anything. And so I think that's what the exhibition is kind of dealing with. And there's a bunch of other like personal narratives throughout the show. And so I strongly suggest people to go visit it, and because Being is there, and Being can give you a tour of the exhibition. They can talk extensively about each work in the show. And I think for 5, I was still thinking about that frame and how to expand or escape that frame. But I think I was thinking a lot about kind of reframing the Black radical, and thinking about how a huge influence for creating that work was, going to Tipitina's when I was really young and going to see jazz trios and thinking about improvisation, because improvisation is something that I use in my work a lot. And I think that it's just as a tool for making, but then also I think it's inherently part of the Black experience. There's an element of improvisation that we're kind of always engaging in to kind of navigate, that dramatic space I was talking about. So I think that's a bit of what Black magic is that improvisational kind of dance. But I think in 5, I was thinking about how the early jazz trios in like the 60s and 70s were kind of like connected to all these liberation movements, right? And all this, activism, and how radical that was as a musical form, but then also the work that people were doing. And it became this kind of pinnacle for Black social life. Yeah. But somehow, when I think about that, there is kind of a bit of a thing that has to be resolved, because it was all centered around Black, hetero, male virtuosity. Yeah. Saidiya Hartman talks in the book, Wayward Girls, about like that Black social death, and I was really inspired by that. And I was thinking about how in that space, I mean, she talks a lot about how women were subjugated in that space, but I was thinking a lot about the Black queer, and how there's lots of Black queers who have engendered a lot of different liberation movements, but they weren't really a part of that space, right? And so even though I love that movement and what it did, there's kind of like this disconnect for me as a Black queer person. And so I wanted to kind of reimagine that radical Black space in a way that was more inclusive. And so, you have this, jazz trio, this group of musicians who are all playing improvisationally, and we're sort of surrounding this dancer who is in a frame. The frame reemerges. The frame is on the floor, and so we're kind of playing and imbuing this figure with all this improvisational energy, kind of charging them up. And as they're dancing, I use another collage, like the collages in the show, but much more technology based, which is a program I wrote using Max MSP and some video game hardware, particularly the Xbox Connect. And as the dancer performs, I track either their hand, their hips, or their foot, and you see this form being generated in real time that has escaped the frame that they're dancing in, right? So it's another way of kind of trying to visualize this sort of way in which we have to do the work to kind of escape these frames. And I think in the ball, the frame emerges in the way in which people in ballroom mirror kind of like the heteronormative space that kind of shunned them, but somehow it's still showing up when you think about like the binary ways in which we talk about gender in ballroom, like butch queen, femme queen, this and that. So like nobody in ballroom is actually living their lives by those binaries, but somehow within the ballroom structure, there's still these binaries. And then also this kind of allegiance to capitalism and how, there's so much of some of the categories is about, having these things that keep you in this paradigm where, if I have these things, then I have power, I have value. But, folk are existing in a inequitable society, so you're at a disadvantage to kind of get those things. So if that's your only way of having value, you're trapped, right? You can never really have value. And so for the ball, I'm trying to kind of obliterate that frame and really put a premium on creativity. So rather than having things, your thing is being creative, and everyone has the ability to be creative or use their imagination, which I think is like steps towards like actually freeing yourself, right? Yeah. And so, so I'm kind of asking people in ballroom to kind of reimagine, a Mickalene Thomas painting on the ballroom floor, or Marlon Riggs's Institute of Snapthology, or Bill T. Jones' Still Here, or even my own work 5 on the ballroom floor.
Yeah. Huh. Well, history lesson. Yeah. It's why it always appears to be so glamorous, yet it does still have an accessibility, but it's also not. This isn't how you necessarily present on the street every day. It's sort of like an elevated explanation of a mindset, which is just amazing. What has been the response of this whole piece?
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, I think people have responded really well to the exhibition. It's always interesting to see people come into the gallery and speak to being. I think I'm kind of interested in being's perspective on the people more, because I want to kind of continue to expand their ability to interact with human beings, and a lot of that will be based on the data that's gathered during its time here in Philly, and because it's going to actually, the whole exhibition is going to move to San Francisco after this.
Oh, wow.
And so that's been great. We did the performance the weekend before last in New York, the performance 5, and that was, we got sold out both nights, standing ovation both nights, and so I'm really hoping that we have that same experience here in Philly.
Wow.
And then the ball was last night, and that was, it was just fantastic.
I know, when I saw that, I'm like, did we just miss? I'm like, you're going to have to, all right, so tell us what we missed already, and now we have a window of time to experience the rest.
Yeah, well, you can definitely come and see 5 on Saturday.
Okay.
And, I would love if you all came. And, with the ball, I would say what you miss is like, it was just a really good time. It was just, when you think about, how I talk about this whole like space of like black magic, I think in a lot of ways too, what this project has been is kind of like a healing space for folk who are coming to see it, because it's called black magic for a reason. It's really, there's a very specific audience. That's not to say that everybody can't come and participate. But I feel like the audience that is speaking to directly, my experience from what I hear from them is that it's just been really healing.
Yeah.
And so that ball to me, it was like, a family kind of barbecue or party. Like everybody was having a good time. Yeah, everybody was a fellowship. It was like a good time. It was like people were performing incredible performances.
Yeah.
People reimagining, other people's work. And so, it was.
And there's a hunger for it too. Whenever we get, snippets of it, most of my focus comes from theater. Mm-hmm. And whenever, our marginalized voices tend to take center stage, we're sort of reminding our community that, one, we've always been here, two, we've always had this talent, and now you're just paying attention for some reason, but we're also there saying, yes, more of this. You hear me? Yeah. More of this. Yeah. This. Yeah. None of this, let's stop going back to the canon, pulling things in. Let's do this. Let's have more of a celebration of this and continue to embrace and move forward with it all. So it's just great. And I feel like if I was aware of this back in September, I'd have been like, oh, so I have my September through November plan.
Well, you can still go see the show. It's up till November 30th.
Yes.
And you can come to the performance.
Yes. We will definitely do that. So you did touch on a little bit. What is next for you as an artist? You're bringing this to San Francisco?
Yeah, so this project is going to travel to San Francisco. However, it's going to kind of shift in San Francisco. Rather than 5 being the performance element, it's going to be another performance called Running, which is my newest performance work that I presented in 2017 at the Park Avenue Armory. Okay. And it's really kind of highlighting the diasporic tradition of vocal runs. And it's a sonic piece. I can't say much about it because it's a piece that's really meant to be experienced, but what I can say is it's a portrait of soul and light and voice. And so I'll be presenting that. It'll be like the West Coast presentation of that, and then we will be staging the ball as well.
And for the ball, will you be working with the same people, or
it's going to be, the ball is always site specific, so I bring in the general team I work with of like the commentators and the DJ who've been working with me since the beginning, since I started it, but like the categories are always based on an artist's work, and so it's always a different set of artists, and I try to choose artists that are specific to that region. So I'm already starting to think about Bay Area artists. I know for sure some people like Kenyatta Hinkle, who's based there, who has a show up at SF MoMA right now. She will definitely be a category. And I'm still thinking about that. I should also say, before we go to San Francisco, we're going to be doing the ball in Miami as part of Art Basel. And this is kind of like a very unique ball for this one. It's called the Titans edition. So I'm bringing out all the icons and legends,
heavy hitters,
and kind of making these kind of almost curating these battles of these real titans in ballroom in specific performance categories. And so that's going to really be something to see.
That'd be great.
And Swiss Beats is going to be there. He's working on the Dean Collection, is working on it with me, so him and Alicia will be there judging. And I'm still kind of figuring out the categories, but I kind of know some of the icons that I'm bringing out to battle, one of which is, two. The winner of the ball here last night, Michaela Landvan, will definitely be coming out to battle, and also Kevin J. the Prodigy will be coming too.
Can I talk to you a little bit about pop culture?
Yeah, sure.
So we've been embracing Pose for a couple of seasons now. Is it accurate? Is Pose accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is. I mean, I'll be honest. The first episode, I was just kind of like, okay, what is this? With like the museum, like robbing the Met or whatever. I was, first of all, why are the black queer people robbing the Met?
Yeah.
And,
I love how
as
they
if
got
that
out
could
of
even happen. That's just crazy. But then once we got past that, I mean, I really fell in love with the show, and I mean, Billy Porter is just
Yes.
fucking
Finally getting his
amazing.
due.
Yeah, like so long.
I mean,
overdue.
well, he was
Yeah.
getting his due, but
Yeah, but like not at the level
yes,
that
yeah,
he should have been. So you know, like him, and then just MJ Rodriguez. I just like she just can do no wrong. To me,
Yeah.
I just love that character. I felt like that character was so compelling and just so so transgressive. Like there's never been a character like that on TV ever. You know. And so I like that, and I mean Janet Mock's writing is obviously incredible, in the ways in which she's kind of challenging outmoded ideas of ballroom, specifically with that episode in this last season about the role of women in the ballroom scene, and how she was thinking really critically about that, and so I feel like that episode was really important.
yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a really good show. I think it has a lot of potential.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
I do like how they point out how Vogue Madonna's Vogue sort of reintroduced people to the culture, but at the same time should not be fully, widely, celebrated as like a savior. In a sense, they do point out how this is putting us on the map, but then they get sadly disillusioned as it starts to dwindle. That popularity starts to fade back again. Another piece of culture that kind of taps into ballroom recently was more on the comedic side. There's a series called A Black Lady Sketch Show
Oh yes,
on HBO, and they did the
I
basic
love
ball.
Bob the drag queen.
Yeah.
Bob drag queen. I love him so much.
They did, I think it was called the Basic Ball, and it was
Yeah.
just all these average,
Yeah.
average categories.
What was it, like awkward in the body
Yes,
category?
yes.
And he was like, you just said bye, and then you run into the person again, and you have to say bye again. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm sitting here going, another, yes, more
Yeah.
of this, more of this. But yeah, I thought that was so amazing, and I was literally crying I was like, who can I tell? I was like, I feel like everybody needs to know, but it's like specific people will understand what I'm talking about. So as we wrap up here, I love to ask artists, what creates a sense of urgency for you as an artist, and how does that shine through in your work?
I think what creates a sense of urgency for me is knowing that we exist in what Bell Hooks calls the capitalist, imperialist, white supremacist patriarchy, and how insidious that apparatus is in everyone's lives. And so that sense of urgency is that we must think critically about that apparatus and how it's in our lives and how we are engaging with it, and how we need to really kind of decolonize our minds so we can navigate it in a way that is liberating and not at the expense of others. And so that is something that I'm constantly kind of keeping at the fore in my creative process.
Great. And how can our listeners experience your work and continue to follow your artistic journey?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram, Rashad Newsome Studio, or on Facebook, Rashad Newsome Studio, or sign up to my mailing list on my website, rashadnewsome.com. And yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for coming in to chat with me today.
Thanks for having me.
The exhibition is called Black Magic. It is on display until November 30th at the Philadelphia Photo Art Center. And what's the location on that?
That is 1300 North American Street.
Yeah. We'll put the link in the
Yeah.
bio. So there's still time to experience this wonderful work, and if you're making your way over to San Francisco, you can catch
Fort
it over there
Mason.
too, or
Yes.
even Miami
Yeah.
for a brief stint. But Rashad, thank you so much for taking the time to come chat with me. I'm so fortunate to learn so much more about this, and I can't wait to drag everyone who is available with me to come experience the exhibition at the Philadelphia Photo Art Center.
And it's come on Saturday.
Yes, yes.
And make sure you sit like low, because there's like a whole element that's going to happen that you need to be.
Ah, that'll be great.
I'll just leave it that. So we'll see you on Saturday.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Truly a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise.
Head on over to our website at www.broadstreetreview.com and click Get Involved at the top. While you're there, help keep us running and click Contribute to find out how. Connect with us on social media, on Facebook and Twitter at Broad Street Review. Thank you for helping to keep the conversation going.